Welcome to Quality of Life Radio, hosted by Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
Aha, the gong has spoken. Welcome to Big Blend Radio with Nancy and Lisa. You know, we're the mother-daughter publishing team of Big Blend Magazines, which includes Quality of Life magazine now. And we also host Big Blend Radio as we travel full-time across the country, documenting parks and public lands on our Love Your Parks tour. So today is a special Juneteenth show. And we've got two very special guests joining us. We're very excited. We have Dr. LaDonna Boyd joining us. She is the CEO of legendary publisher RH Boyd. And RH Boyd was founded by a formerly enslaved Dr. Richard Henry Boyd. It's now in its fifth generation of leadership and celebrating 125 years of printing and publishing. Cool. Wow. I know, Nancy and I were good at 25 years together here. But
yeah, we got 100 more to go.
I know. So welcome, LaDonna. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having us on.
It's good to have you on the show, and I want everyone to know your website, rhboyd.com. That's B-O-Y-D. And then we also have HH-Leonards. We call her Lady H. She is the author of Rosa-Parks Beyond the Bus, Life Lessons and Leadership. It is out today, which is why we're doing this special broadcast, and it is published by RH Boyd. And I encourage you to go to her website, omansion.com, because literally she's in a mansion. So welcome, Lady H. How are you?
I am so happy to be talking with you all. It's quite an honor.
Oh, we're glad to have you back on the show, and also to really connect Rosa-Parks history. And I love that we have, Dr. LaDonna Boyd here on the show, so she can give us a little history of the publishing company, and then also looking at the choices to publish this incredible story. So, Dr. Boyd, tell us a little bit about RH Boyd as a publishing company, how it really got started.
Okay. Well, again, thank you so much for this opportunity to be on today. I certainly do appreciate it. And, yes, we're so excited that RH Boyd, we celebrate over 125 years in printing, publishing, and education. And we are just thrilled to be able to continue to carry the torch, if you will, of my great-great-grandfather who wanted to give, at that time, newly freed African Americans the opportunity to have their own voices heard and their own images seen and represented in a positive light, and especially in the context of their faith. So historically, we've been faith-based, providing many resources to the Black church, and so we've expanded beyond that as well. So obviously, our faith-based content is still very important to us, and that is the majority of our business. But we've also wanted to branch out to provide resources that just tell the story of African Americans throughout various different genres. So whether it's historical books and narratives, or focusing on community or financial literacy or education, or anything that will, again, tell the story and make the lives of African Americans better is what we want to focus on.
I love it. And, I just think about 125 years ago and how hard it was for African Americans to get books and reading literature and have the classes. Yeah. We've traveled, in our parks tour to a number of communities, and some, it was at Louisiana, Nancy, at Cane River Creole National Historical Park. We met a man, Mr. Alvin Shields, and he basically, when they made this a park of the National Park Service, he was very instrumental of it because it is a plantation. And it's actually two plantations, has the only brick slave cabins in the South or Southeast. And it also has the sharecropper cabins, and one of them was his family's. And if it wasn't for the Park Service and him, that cabin would have been destroyed and just kind of left to rot. And amazing story. And he, made plantation toys. He teaches kids, but he also we did a video with him where he talked about education and how his parents and his whole family went to school together. And so everybody was learning at multiple ages together. And so he talked about how hard it was for his family to get an education. He went on to become an engineer, served in the military. He's written a book. He's done amazing things. but he really stressed that need for education, especially in the smaller communities. So I think it's amazing, what your great-grandfather did. Or is it great-great-grandfather? Got to get this right here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And one of the things that was cool about meeting Elvin was the wire toys that he made. We spent a lot of time in Kenya, and we saw the children with those very same toys. Mm-hmm. So it was really kind of an eye-opener to see those toys here in the States. Because we recognized them right away, and we were like, "Well, look at that," So it was kind of, that custom has traveled all this way and been here for years in that one little cabin where he used to sit and make his toys. That's so cool.
Wow.
I think this is where it comes to education, and that leads us to Lady H. HH-Leonards, everyone, author of Rosa-Parks Beyond the Bus. This book is very, it's a different thing. These are lessons, right? And so we go back to the education, but very inspiring. And Lady H, it's very interesting how you connected with Rosa-Parks, because you got a call, right, saying Rosa-Parks wants to come stay with you, but you didn't know who she was at this point, right?
Correct. I'm an example of where we need more education in our public school system, because growing up in the Midwest, we did not have any.
Oh, wow. Wow. And so what happened for her to, what was it, who called you, and why? Why did you need to house Rosa-Parks?
Mr. Willis Edwards, who was the president of the NAACP in Beverly Hills, was a good friend of Mrs. Parks. Got a call that she had been severely beaten in her home in Detroit, and started to look for a place that she could go to when she got out of the hospital that didn't cost anything, because the one thing she was adamant about was never going back into her home. And then he heard about our Heroes in Residence program, where we house people here at no cost, and made that call, could she please stay with us? And that's how it all started.
And she stayed with you,
sometimes
what, 10 years?
Ignorance is, I'm sorry, what?
No, go ahead. Go ahead with what you're saying.
But sometimes ignorance becomes bliss, because I didn't know who she was, but I could tell the need from his voice that I had to say the words yes, that she came to me. And I didn't know who she was for several years, so that we bonded on a personal level, not on I'm a famous person and you're here to serve me. So it became very special. And that's why I tell people all the time, don't judge people by the way they look or what they've done. Seek who they are within themselves and open yourselves up to saying the words yes. And those are all lessons Mrs. Parks taught me.
And she lived with you in the mansion for, what, 10 years?
Yes. She did not leave for approximately a year. She took that time to gain strength emotionally, spiritually, and physically. And then she became more active and productive in the last 10 years of her life than ever before, I think, because she took that time. So when bad things happen to you, another thing she taught was go within yourself, heal yourself, take care of people that are worse off than you are, and go forward and follow your mission and your vision.
I love that. It's, you've got to rise up each time, something happens, and but I like that you talk about the healing first,
Yes.
Because you try to rise up at the time when you're not healing, it's even harder, and that's sometimes where we don't get up as much as, as fast as we need to. LaDonna, I wanted to go to you about how you connected with Lady H and how this book came about and your decision to publish it.
Okay, absolutely. So a member of our team, one of our senior editors, brought this project to our attention and was very enthusiastic about it and the relevance of the story that needed to be told. So we reviewed it internally and realized very quickly that, yes, we do need to proceed with this, and it's something that it's a relevant story today, and we wanted to make sure that we've put it on paper for future generations as well, to continue to learn about the life and lessons of Mrs. Parks. her strength is something that kind of permeates through time, if you will. I often think about my ancestors. I can't imagine how my great-great-grandfather in the late 1800s was able to create this company and do things, literally it was illegal to be literate as a Black person. So then to kind of take that and be able to overcome it and create something successful. And I also look at the strength of Mrs. Parks. I couldn't imagine, at that time being alive in the 1950s and refusing to get up. Like it just took a level of strength that's it's hard to quantify. So I commend her and others for being able to exhibit a level of strength that at that time literally could get you killed or injured, or it's a threat to your family. And luckily in our modern times, that's not something that we have to face very often, but it was very real at those times.
It's really kind of, when you go back and you look at histories, especially this kind of a history, it's always pretty amazing just how bad people have treated each other in the past, and some continue on today. But you look and sometimes I wonder, were our brains completely different because we just don't seem to have been that smart back then? You know what I mean? It's like, are we that different than somebody from the 1700s or the 1800s? Are we that different, Or is it just some of us are really different, Because it's just hard to imagine the way people were treated.
Well, we still have problems. We definitely have problems in this country and others. And it's kind of like it's all come back to surface. I think civil rights, we need to still stand for civil rights, for doesn't matter the race, and for women.
And women's
right.
And at one point, even children's rights, to get them out of having to work when they were children. It's just like, where were their minds? I don't understand.
Well, but it's still happening. So I think, and we've had this uprising, obviously, over the last 10 years in this country, which is disappointing and dreadful and traumatic. And, I look at this where Rosa-Parks, I think I love that the title is Beyond the Bus, because I think a lot of us just look at this as iconic and, that happened then. But this is something that we can use today to make positive change. Would you say that, Lady H, with writing the book and putting it together, that you were looking at also about what you were imparting for today, people of today, and making change?
I absolutely was, because her message and her messages and her way of life and how she lived her life is more important and as germane today as it was in the 1950s and in the 1930s. We are on the cusp of having to make change now, and her whole philosophy was, the laws can change, but nothing changes unless we change people's hearts. And she was saying that for years, and now it's more important than ever, because the laws did change, but now they're changing. And what we missed in those years was to change people's perceptions and people's hearts. So this book is more important than ever. And I also want to say how God works in mysterious ways, because this was the only publisher I went to. I thought it was really important that this book be published by H. Boyd, because in my perception, they are moral leaders, and they will get the word out, because this is the message. Their whole history is about getting this message out, and Dr. Boyd is awesome.
Yeah, I think, it's this part of the expansion process for R.H. Boyd is doing this kind of literature, right, LaDonna, for people to grasp and open their minds and hearts. When I look at it, it's not just our minds but hearts. Are you looking at this kind of book to make change and looking at other titles to do the same?
Absolutely. Well, thank you.
History,
thank you for that.
I think their history has been about that, and it's so strong and so solid and so beautiful in what they've accomplished over these years and what they are embarking on today. It's pretty exciting for me to have this partnership. Yeah, and I'm honored to have it.
To me, it's important that we do have publishers that do this, because a lot of times publishers, may not go with something that is on the positive, it is taking a stand for civil rights when you publish something like this. And so I think it's important, and the more we have, the better. That opens up those doors of communication, and reading education is everything. And, LaDonna, I want to ask you about this too, because when you publish these kinds of books with education, doesn't it, and I wonder about your great-great-grandfather, if he also looked at education as also being part of growth economically for African Americans.
Absolutely.
In the country. Yeah.
Absolutely. It was relevant then, and it's relevant today as well. So as I mentioned earlier, literally it was illegal for Black people to be literate. You couldn't read or write because obviously there's power in that, as we know. So, he was fortunate enough to learn how to read and write. I believe he was in late teens or early 20s when he learned how to do that, and just that kind of fire was sparked in him, obviously, because he started a publishing company. So he realized the power in just the written word and literacy, and just being able to understand and articulate thoughts and expressions and be able to relay relevant and important information to his community. And that's something that's so important today. And I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and just even our literacy rates here are so low in our metro school system that's a major concern to our community. Wow. Whether you're a parent or not, for those in the business world, it's terrifying. It's like, okay, workforce, you're thinking like, what does that look like for everyone long term? It's got financial implications for everyone. There's direct correlation between low literacy rates and higher crime or incarceration rates. So it's a never ending cycle. So from me back 5 generations ago, we understand the importance of providing resources to the community to enhance literacy rates and give them the opportunity for their own self-expression.
I think also when you look at the publishing world, it's changed so much over the 125 years. I mean, Nancy had a magazine that I worked for as a kid in South Africa, and I remember that, copy and paste days, man. I mean, and then it was like at one point we had Nancy had the mothership, the Apple computer came out. I think she had one of 3 in South Africa at the time, and she was printing her own film, and the printers weren't used to that, and it was like, what?
Yeah.
And so it changes.
It's funny. I arrived at the printer with the magazine on a disc.
A floppy.
And the printer's like, what's that? And I'm like, uh-oh.
So we've gone through this, and now we're digital, and we're doing podcasting. And so as a publisher, you guys have had to go through all these changes. Are you seeing that, doing audio books and things like that, helping to spread the education? Because if you look at the younger generation, they seem to be so, I think they're still reading, obviously, but the listening seems to be also trending in, taking in content.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's important to realize that everyone learns differently. For me, I'm a visual learner. I learn from seeing and from doing. Some people are better at, listening comprehension or whatever it may be. And I think, our lifestyles are so kind of on the go and active. Like, it's rare that people are actually sitting still. This is even for me, sitting still, doing an interview right now. It's probably the first time today that I've done that. So, we're always on the move, always on the go, and you have to reach people where they're at. So whether, we want to reach them on the radio, on their phones, on their laptops, devices, physically, in their hand with a printed book. So I think that just providing all those different opportunities and resources is important.
And, also going out and connecting with people in person. I know it's been difficult over the last couple years, but Lady H, didn't Rosa-Parks really keep working at that, where she, went in front of audiences and also worked in education and, spreading her gospel, if you will.
Education was very important to her because she had to drop out of school many times. I don't think she was maybe 23 when she finally got her high school education, because every time someone got sick in her family, she went to work to care for the family. So it was a really critical path, and why she started the Rosa and Raymond Parks Institute in Detroit. And she put people of all ages together because she felt that the seniors and the young children could learn from each other, and that would balance things out. And it was pretty dynamic watching that in action. But she felt also that it was important to learn how to do things. So if you didn't learn in school how to sew, give people professions, and that's what her institute focused on.
Wow. And with her, today, this is a special broadcast for Juneteenth Day, and we look at, this is the day your book is out, and it's also Father's Day. So, LaDonna, this is very good for all your different generations of RH Boyd Publishing, So we look at that legacy. But Lady H for Rosa-Parks, did she ever talk about her family and, her parents? Who inspired her?
She talked about her family frequently, and her mother, she also talked about her mother not being prepared for motherhood, and that what that was like being sent out to her grandparents to be reared. And she always, no matter what happened to her, she always looked at it as a positive. So she says very clearly, if her mother hadn't sent her to live with her grandparents, she would not have been able to become Mrs. Rosa-Parks. But the second half of her life, she tended to her mother. They had a very close, loving relationship. She never looked at it as a bad thing, which is also, no matter what happened to Mrs. Parks, she never said a bad word about anything, and she only looked at the positive, which is another lesson in leadership that is so critical and so important. But she was also very open about her relationship with her mother when she was a small child, because she wanted children to understand that no matter what their background was, that they could all become Mrs. Parks, that bad things happen, but you have to make them good.
Yeah.
So it's true.
Yeah. When you go in your family history, obviously you, LaDonna, have this legacy, that you've learned from. Now, was education kind of drummed into you to go to college? Were you put to work? Like I was put to work as soon as I could walk.
That's right.
Because I needed to be, that was, otherwise I got myself in trouble. So Nancy's always like, oh, you want something, you're going to be working for it. You want a guitar, well, you're going to do some chores and, that kind of thing. And so was your childhood like that too?
Yes. Well, I will say my childhood was very blessed. We were very fortunate, certainly. Growing up, we still understood the importance of hard work and work ethic and excelling in school. So my parents were very big on that. Just do your work, be a good student, be a good person, do your work, and get good grades. And so I did that. That was my focus. So, yeah, it was always understood. Like, I never had a question or a doubt that I would go to college and beyond. So, but, that's something that, again, was instilled when I was very little. So I feel like I've been in school my whole life. I'm finally finished now, but, going straight through undergrad and then a couple of years later, master's, and a couple of years later, or a few years later, doctorate. So it's just, that's been my focus is education and literacy and writing and publishing and working. So I think we all need a vacation right about now.
I know your vacations
are good.
But, it's, the working and going through the education process, it's crucial. It's something still lacking, and just, thinking, being able to move forward on that, but also in the publishing industry, how many women are at the helm? That's something, we don't actually hear about all the time of women at the helm. There was always that picture, and I always, back in the day of our print magazine, I always wanted to run the press because I loved the press. I loved the printing press. And I said, one day I'm going to be the woman sitting with my feet up on the table and my desk with, the cigar but I don't smoke cigars and all that. But and it will be red wine. Thank you very much. But you know what I mean? And then we went digital. When Nancy says we're going 100% digital, I was like, no, we can't, because I need the press.
We can't.
But I had to get over it. But you know, it was. I don't know any woman that I don't know any women publishers or printers. I don't think I can count one. So are you kind of lonely up there?
Not lonely per se, but you're right. There's not very many. I think I'm the only one that kind of sits in this dual seat in printing and publishing. And there are women in leadership, don't get me wrong, but I don't know. I don't think there are any that are, you know, autonomous and in charge and leading their organizations. I don't know. And I'm under 40, so then to be able to say that and be under 40, I don't know. I think I might be the only one.
Yeah,
right
think
on.
It's extraordinary.
It's
power.
It's very
Congratulations.
difficult. Yeah,
Thank you.
And the publishing world is not an easy one, and
right.
You know, and it's so hats off to you, because I know how hard this can get.
Yes.
And also, you know, even from the educational point of view, I had an opportunity to teach a little bit in Kenya. Not that I have teacher degrees or things that I was supposed to have, but I was teaching art to some students there in a classroom because I was asked to, because they wanted the children to really use their English. And so it was fun, because I would draw a shape on the chalkboard and they would say what it was, and their accent was so different. I'm like, what? And all we did was laugh, really, to be honest. But it was a really good experience where I saw children who would never dream of cutting school, ever. They were so excited and wanted to learn because their parents had instilled in them that if you don't get educated, you're not really going to fulfill any of your dreams. You're not going to have that great a life. You're going to be herding goats. That's kind of how they talk to their kids, and the kids were excited to learn new skills. And I just thought, wow, this is so much easier than sometimes in teaching in the States, where you know, because they felt privileged to be educated. Well, and I think we kind of forget that.
It's very important about the education of the youth, because it's in going through college and going, you know, through the ladders like you have, LaDonna, and it is so important because it's not just about getting a better paycheck or a career that you want. Economically, and understanding you are now part of making changes for your community, whatever your community is, whether it's regional, whether it's family, you know, it's about making economic change, because then you have an educated vote and, you know, voting rights, which we all need to keep. I'm getting scared.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You're right.
But you really can change the economic structure of a community through education, and it's a very powerful thing to have. And it's important. And some people, the only way is through books, is your way of education. So I think that's what is so powerful with what you're doing. And I think, you know, Lady H, you writing this book, you know, tell us a little bit about that decision and writing it, because you're an incredible author. I mean, LaDonna, you must have been happy, right? Having this kind of good writing. Where does your writing skill come from, Lady H?
I know this sounds strange hearing it out loud, but I definitely think it was channeled from Mrs. Parks, in that she is a gift from God. I did not have difficulty writing because I was writing her story, and it really came through her. I was just the conduit to make it happen. And you were talking about education, and I just wanted to say one thing. Mrs. Parks had many conversations with me about that, and she was so happy to learn about the Internet. I showed her how to use a computer, and that she said learning comes in different ways for different people at different times. So she didn't necessarily, for those who couldn't go to college or those who couldn't finish high school, that they could go on the internet to learn. And we never ask anyone that works for us what their resume is or what school they went to because of that. There's so many talented people that just need that chance.
Exactly.
And when they're given it, they soar with it. And so many people that dropped out of school and are changing the world in their way because they have the mission and they have the vision. And that's the most important thing. Who do you want to become? Every day ask that question.
You know, and that's an important thing because how many kids dropped out of school to help raise the family, you know, or go get a job? Many. So many across the country and around the world. And that's the other thing, you know, what I love about the publishing world now, the books are easily accessible worldwide, right? LaDonna, how hard is that to do, though? I mean, isn't it easier with Kindle kind of things that people can, you know, access the book? You don't have to live in the country. Yeah, it's massive. It's massive how that ripple effect can happen. So I do want to ask each of you a lesson from the book. And everyone, again, the book is Rosa-Parks, Beyond the Bus, Life Lessons and Leadership. So there's a lot of lessons in there. And so for each of you, a lesson from the book, from Rosa-Parks, that sits near and dear to you that we haven't kind of touched on today's segment. So let's start with you, Lady H. What is one lesson
Put me
you
on
want
this
to share?
spot. Put me on this spot.
Oh, come on.
Because there were so many lessons that she taught me, and sometimes when you're learning them, you're not cognizant of what you're absorbing. But I think the most important thing is to seize the moment. Nothing that happens to you is about you. There's a higher purpose and a higher calling that you have to look to. So anything that happened to her, she had that feeling. Seize the moment to help other people.
I like that. Yeah, exactly.
And
feel better.
The other thing that you had said, that you had asked the question, and she never said no to anything. When people asked her to speak, it didn't matter if there was 5 people or 500 people. She always said yes, because she said that anytime she got a chance to shake someone's hand and have a conversation, that's how you change hearts. So this book is near and dear to me because I want to go to all the churches. I want to go to the libraries. I want to be able to speak her message to affect change. And boy, do we need it now.
And all the colleges and all the politicians.
I'm shaking my head up and down, yes.
I think all any political leader needs to read it because it's true, you know, and the youth needs to read it because I think, you know, for youth right now, it's so scary. The world is scary. You know, pandemic didn't help. War is not helping. The horrible stuff. The shootings, the racism we really have a racism issue in this country that has to be addressed. And I think these are the ways to do it, because when someone sits with a book, it's a personal thing, not anybody in your face telling you what to believe or do. A book allows you to relax, read, absorb, go back to it, read it again, you know, and make your own mind up of how you want to move forward, you know. And I think that's something that's so powerful about whether you're listening to them or reading them, you know. So I think it's the way for people to have a conversation again, too. Hey, I just read this. This is what I learned. You know what I mean? Hey, you want this? You know, I'll pass it on to you. Go get it, you know. So I think that's I think it's a step without all the lines being drawn in the sand of people kind of learning, and it's a beautiful thing. So for you, LaDonna, what is a lesson that you learned from the book? Or I should say from Rosa-Parks, too.
Right, yes. There were quite a bit of lessons. I'll say one of the things that resonated with me was her love of shoes, which was important. But also,
well, I know,
that is referenced in the book. But I would say, and even Lady H referred to this earlier in the interview, was Mrs. Parks' ability to have inward focus. So go inside of yourself, if you will, to rebuild and regain your inner strength, to be able to have the strength to take on the day and take on the world. She has so many things thrown at her literally and physically, and to have that level of strength, that certainly stemmed from her faith and her inner resolve. So I think that that's the most important thing, as today there's so many distractions, so many things that can negatively impact a person, but you have to have that internal and inner strength and that resolve in order to take on the tasks at hand. So, and she did that beautifully.
I really agree. And having gone through an assault in her home, that is something traumatic. Nancy and I have been through some things in life that has, you get PTSD from it later. And to move forward for a woman that is about love and forgiveness and, leading with these important messages. So you got to go, because this is something that people are dealing with now. How do you handle? Whoa, what was that?
Oh, wow.
We're all beaming up now or something.
Surf's up.
That was good.
That's me. It's an airplane.
Oh, wow. We are beaming up.
I'm in the gardens. I'm actually talking to you from the Rosa-Parks garden.
Oh, awesome. She's garden. That's awesome. How did she move forward from an assault? And because this is something that there are so many assaults in this country, that how does someone not get angry at the perpetrator, and there's, being a victim, how do you move forward? So Lady H, can you share with us about Rosa Parks after that? How does she move on without, wanting to take revenge or being scared the rest of her life,
Well, in the 30s, she was documenting rape victims, which is unheard of in the 1930s. It was at her, but she did it so that women and men would have a voice, and that helped her heal. And the same thing after 1981, she focused on soldiers with PTSD because she felt so badly that she hadn't understood her own brother who suffered from PTSD from World War II. So she wanted, in his honor, to do that. But she also was a Christian, and she learned through her experiences over the years that the most everything, when you go to sleep at night and pray, and in the morning, as important is to forgive yourself. And that's what she did, and that's how she survived it. That's how she was such a strong woman.
Yeah, my grandmother taught me that when people do mean things to you, that they're coming from a place of their own insecurity. So if you can handle a situation when someone's being violent or horrible and this name calling, being racist, whatever it is, you come from a place of, I know I'm not who you say I am. I know who I am. You have that. You don't react or overreact. You can defend yourself, but the people who accost others, they really do have a problem. They're coming from massive insecurity that either comes from their childhood or it's something's wrong somewhere there. It's within them where the problem lies.
Fear.
Yeah, it's fear, insecurity, fear. Fear is part of insecurity.
Well, racism is not
it's
something
definitely
you were born with.
Insecurity.
Yeah,
that's insecurity, and that's taught.
Mm-hmm.
Hey,
I was the only white kid in most of my life as a baby. I was the only white kid when they were growing up, and everybody looked at me like, "You're weird looking. Look at your straight hair." So it was a whole other education, and none of us really cared as kids. We didn't care, we were.
And Lisa, some of your classmates thought that you were a boy because where Lisa went to school, the men had long hair and the girls had short hair. So
it was Maasai tribe. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you learn, but
I was a boy.
I'm hoping through this book that it will, alleviate and get some better perspectives. And LaDonna, is that something with RH Boyd that you're looking at doing with more titles? Are these kind of things and getting them into colleges or those kind of libraries?
Absolutely, yes. We are looking to pursue any avenue that makes sense for our organization and that, again, just spreads our mission and the projects that we're working on.
Well, they're awesome. Thank you both for joining us. I'm so glad we can do this as a special show for Juneteenth and Father's Day. We got to give it up to the Boyd men. What a legacy, and it's wonderful to have you at the helm, and very excited to see where this book goes. And I think a lot is going to happen. And Lady H, are you open to doing book clubs, like a book club stories?
Absolutely. You ask, and I shall be there. Virtually or in person. And I also think it's so extraordinary, if you think about it, that Juneteenth this year is on Father's Day.
I know.
How special is that?
Yeah, it is. We weren't supposed to have a show, and we're like, no, let's do this, But there it is. It's awesome. It's awesome. And everyone, again, the book title, I love it, is Rosa-Parks Beyond the Bus, Life Lessons and Leadership, again, published by RH Boyd. It's out now. You can go to rhboyd.com and get it anywhere you want. Go, if it's a local bookstore, ask them to carry it, Amazon, all those places. And also check out omansion.com, and you can see where Rosa Parks stayed for those 10 years. And how many rooms do you have again, Lady H? I mean, it's wild. Like, this is a wild
We
thing.
have 110 rooms. 110 rooms and 80 secret doors to explore or try to find. But the above average is 5 that people find when they're here. And what's great about coming here is you can actually see and feel where Mrs. Parks lived.
And go to her garden.
Cool.
Yeah, I love that you have a garden. Well, thank you both for joining us. Everyone, also keep up with us at bigblendradio.com. We're going to close with music from one of our most favorite artists, Kwame Benet. And Kwame Benet and the Shakedown, they were out of Harlem, but now they're in New Jersey. They're everywhere. And go to KwameBenetShakedown.com. This is a song from, it was the title track to their album, Universal Love, Roots, Rocks, and Love. It's awesome. This Universal Love was written first by Jimmy Cliff, and Kwame covered it. And this is a song I think that is so appropriate for Juneteenth and also for Rosa Parks and for today. So take a listen. And it's Roots, Rocks, and Universal Love. I'll get that straight. But here it is, Universal Love, again, by Kwame Benet and the Shakedown. Take a listen.
Beyond the